good idea. Kai could count on one hand the number of times his best friend had had good ideas. This was not one of them. But like always, Jason was running full tilt into the fire. You don't have to keep doing this, Kai pleaded. I get paid on Friday. That'll cover the rent. Good, Jason said as he continued to shove items in his pack. Dark clothing, bandana, headlamp, lockpick set, and 2 guns, one packing silver bullets, the other lead, the familiar tools of his trade. Kai's once too, before he'd gone straight. You pay for this month's rent, Jason carried on. What I make on this job should cover the rest of the year. Sitting on the end of Jason's bed, Kai glanced around the room and into the hallway of their tiny lakeside apartment. Yellowed walls from some prior renter's smoking habit, an ever-expanding brown stain on the ceiling from a leaking pipe upstairs, windows that were so mucked over from years of fog and salt water he could barely see out of them, even with better-than-average sight. This sad little box they found themselves trapped in was not worth Jason risking his life. Can it wait then? Kai said. It's 2 days before the anniversary of the rift. It's barely been a week since Paris's dad died. He pointed at the dark, dangerous night outside. Shit is nuts out there right now. From his place behind the bar at Club Sutro, Kai had heard rumblings of a new war between nature and chaos, with mages and paranormals staking positions on Yerba Buena's front lines. Word was this war could be worse than the one that had caused the rift 30 years ago, before either him or Jason were even born. In any event, a human like Jason, or like Kai pretended to be, had no place in it. Jason was undeterred. All the more reason to act now. He rooted around in his closet and returned with a pickaxe, rope, and windbreaker. A water approach, then. Fuck. Was he headed into the Canyonlands? 2 days before the rift anniversary? Unstable jetties littered with crumbling buildings, the fog-shrouded Canyonlands were the definition of shit going down in Yerba Buena. Vincent's death created a power vacuum. Half his shit is sitting unguarded, including the stash Moira has a line on. Where did Kai even start? 1, that's Paris's stash now. You're stealing from our friend. The 3 of them were tight. Paris the best of them, the sweethearted son of the nastiest motherfucker in town. Until Vincent had blackmailed the wrong vampire. And while Kai was on the topic of vampires... And 2, Moira swore to anyone who'd listen after you two broke up that she would get her revenge. Why the fuck would you trust her now? Paris is in hiding, and he wouldn't want Daddy's dirty money anyway. He finished shoving everything in his pack, then stood in front of Kai, hands on his hips. As for Moira, she gets half of what I steal. It's in her interest, too. Kai closed his eyes and inhaled deep, biting back the litany of truths he wanted to spew. She never loved you. She can't be trusted. You're just a human. The Raven doesn't like this. Neither do I. Don't leave us. A finger curled under his chin, lifting it. Open your eyes, Kai. He could never tell Jason no. Jason with his dark, messy hair, his big brown eyes, and his devil-may-care smile. A thing of beauty in this otherwise sad little box. In Kai's sad, lonely world. I'll be fine, he said, thumb swiping away the tear that raced down Kai's cheek. I always am. We can leave. We can just get out of here. Jason's smile fell. With what money? The truth finally slipped out. I don't need money. I just need you. Kai, what? Shoving to his feet, he forced Jason back a step but kept him close, his hands on Jason's face, framing his cheeks and angling his gaze down to his. He swallowed hard, then, on a giant exhale, expelled the truth he'd been holding inside for far too long. I fucking love you. I've always loved you. And if you walk out that door, I don't think you're ever coming back. Always the pessimist. Jason grinned, then did the last thing Kai expected. He crushed his mouth to Kai's, tongues and years of pent-up frustration tangling, Jason's desperate desire matching his own, the kiss everything Kai had dreamed of since he'd first laid his eyes on him. Then, just as quickly, everything Kai had ever wanted was gone. Jason stepped out of his arms, but not completely. He left a hand over Kai's heart, over another truth that he and few others in Yerba Buena knew. If I'm not back by tomorrow night, find me. I know you will. 2. Jason heaved the pickaxe over the edge of the cliff and prayed it caught. A clank, a slide, a catch. Thank fuck. He tugged on the attached rope, testing the hold was secure, then, scrabbling with his other hand, hauled himself the rest of the way up and onto the slippery, uneven jetty he'd spent the past hour climbing. Fucking finally. Wrestling out of his pack, he shoved it aside, then flopped onto his back, gasping for air and flexing his aching fingers as he stared into the foggy nothingness above. The night sky was up there somewhere, maybe even stars, but he wasn't seeing it. Not tonight, and rarely ever in the Canyonlands. One of the reasons the area was favored by all manner of criminals for their misdeeds. Jason wasn't surprised a mobster like Vincent Cirillo had done business here. It's about fucking time. Jason closed his eyes and inhaled deep, wondering how he'd ever thought Moira's voice was sultry, more like sharp as her claws, either of which could eviscerate him on a dime. He couldn't lay there defenseless, not with her and who knows what other creatures lurking in the shadows. He dragged himself up to sitting and pushed his sopping wet hair out of his eyes. He glared at the vampire standing in front of him, hands on her hips, not a blonde hair out of place, not the least bit winded. I would have made it up here sooner if someone would have helped me. I needed to scout the area. He bit his tongue, stifling the bullshit that wanted to roll off it. He'd barely finished mooring the boat to the exposed rebar at the base of the jetty when Moira had begun to scale the cliff face with relative ease, her claws making her footing sure, her small stature and speed making her impact minimal. She was at the top in no time. Meanwhile, every foot Jason scaled had been a 50-50 shot at death. And every second he wasted moaning about it was another second someone, or something, could kill him. He gave himself a good hard shake, then shoved up to his feet, ignoring his tired, screaming muscles and his partner in crime's sneer. After gathering his things, he tucked the climbing gear back in the pack, withdrew his headlamp, and hefted the bag onto his shoulders. All right, lead the way. He blinked, and she was gone again. Fucking hell, Moira. The best he could do was use his headlamp to follow the disturbance in the fog, hoping it was the right direction. But the farther they ventured into the Canyonlands ruins, the more Jason believed Kai had been right. Kai usually was. In no world were explosions, unstable ground, glowing eyes, and rumbling snarls better than the night Kai's kiss had promised. A kiss, a declaration they had danced around for years. For the longest time, Jason had thought it would be Paris and Kai who'd end up together, and he'd been okay with that. Two pure-hearted people who clawed their way out of crime to find love together was the kind of happiness their shitty world needed. But that wasn't what either of his friends had wanted, and as Kai's gaze had strayed to him more often, as their orbits had become inextricably entwined, he'd fallen for his best friend. A man too good for him by miles. more than a man. Which was why Jason had to do everything in his power to keep Kai safe, namely getting them the fuck out of Yerba Buena. They couldn't do that on what Kai made as a bartender, or what Jason made pouring concrete. They needed the windfall that Moira, who zipped back in front of him, promised. "Keep the fuck up," she hissed. "Why don't you try keeping a human pace?" She rolled her eyes, but when she started forward again, it was at a speed Jason could maintain. "What exactly is in this stash?" he asked. "Gold, like I told you. Other valuable shit." Kai's voice rang in his head. "And Vincent thought it was secure here?" He didn't pose the question to Moira as bluntly. "If this stash was so valuable, why didn't Vincent keep it in their private vault, in the condo at Sunset Hill?" He'd seen Paris access the family vault before, usually to steal from his father's supply of daylight, so they could turn around and trade it to vamps for cash and favors, usually at a better price than Vincent offered. That was how Jason had met Moira in the first place. She turned down an alley and stopped in front of a metal door. "This is the last place anyone would look." Jason glanced up at the squat building, relatively intact compared to the high-rise rubble on either side, and relatively secure, the door equipped with a bolt lock. "Work your magic," Moira said, gesturing at the lock. "Why can't you just rip the door open? Why do you need me here at all?" She pressed a single finger to the door, and her flesh instantly sizzled. "Silver core," she said. "And because you can break in quietly, in case there's anyone inside." He gulped. "And if there is?" "You'll make a good sacrifice." He gulped again, then glanced the way they'd come. "You think you'll survive that trek back alone?" Kai had been right. Bad idea from the word go. But Moira was right too. There was little hope in turning back now. He lowered his pack and dug out his lockpick set. The lock took less than a minute to open. The Kai in his head poked again. How important can it really be? Moira kicked the door open with her booted foot, no care for the racket it made, and Jason's alarm ratcheted up another level. He dropped the lockpick set back in his bag and retrieved both pistols before reshouldering the pack. Following her deeper into the building, he kept his eyes peeled for any other signs of life. Just rats as far as he could see or hear. Was that bread they were nibbling on? A stick of jerky one was dragging? There had to have been other life here at some point. Not long ago. A door creaked open at the end of the hallway. Jason glanced up in time to see Moira's blonde hair waft behind her as she entered the room, as if a breeze blew toward her. A warm one, it seemed, a wall of heat hitting Jason just outside the door. Hot, like a long-forgotten day in the sun. The last thing anyone would expect in the cold, foggy canyonlands. As far as Jason could tell, this building had no power, no artificial heat. He firmed his grip on his pistols and rounded the door jamb, through the heat and into the room, expecting a fire, some sort of spell protecting the stash, and found a pile of blankets in the corner. No, not just blankets, a person. Their hands sneaking out to clutch the ends of the blanket, wrapping it more tightly around them, and their bare feet scraping over the floor as they shoved farther back into the corner. Their face was still hidden, most of their body too, but their shiver was obvious, as was the wave of heat that filled the room a moment later. "What is this?" Jason asked the vampire who warily paced in front of the person. "Where's the stash? The gold and jewels you promised?" She jutted her chin at the corner. "There." "Where? Behind them? In the walls?" "No," she said. "He's the stash." What the fuck? Who is he? My way out, she said with haunting reverence, a tone so different from her usual indifference that Jason startled. Then startled again when she lunged toward the person, claws and fangs out. Jason lunged after her, his height eclipsing hers, shoving her off course and into the wall to the person's right. Jason moved between them, both guns pointed toward her. "What are you doing?" She righted herself and began to pace. No, stalk, once more. "There's a rumor going around." She juked, and Jason juked with her, blocking her attempt to get past him. "If a vampire bites a phoenix, they become human again." "A phoenix?" He whipped his gaze over his shoulder and gasped. The young man had freed a hand, and in doing so, the blanket over his head had fallen back. His brown skin was pale, his features so gaunt his skin barely clung to his bones. And his eyes. Fuck. His eyes glowed red and orange like the ball of light. Fire. Hovering over his palm, even as those same eyes shone with terror. "He doesn't want this," Jason said, righting his gaze. Just in time for Moira to barrel into him, using her full supernatural power and speed to knock him off his feet. He hit the ground, his guns jostling from his grasp. The phoenix screamed, and a fireball singed the hair on Jason's arm as it flew toward Moira. And missed. She was on him in the next blink, Moira all hisses and bared fangs, the phoenix barely holding her off with fireballs, the two of them struggling as heat filled the room. Jason scrambled for the pistol with the silver bullets. He grabbed the gun, spun, and leveled it at Moira. "Leave him alone!" When she didn't show any sign of backing off, he fired. 2 bullets center mass. She rounded on him, shrieking, her eyes wide with betrayal and her claws out, arms flailing, aiming to inflict some pain on him before the silver took her for good. She didn't get the chance. A ball of fire swallowed her from behind and hastened her descent into ashes. When the smoke cleared, the young man in the blankets was on his hands and knees on the other side of Moira's charred remains, struggling for breath, barely holding himself up. Jason hurried to his side, squinting against the heat, against the glowing sheen that rippled over his skin. "What can I do?" He collapsed onto his side, panting. "Get out of here!" He shivered, the tremble that racked his body and breaths sounding as painful as it looked. Jason gathered the blankets back around him, then laid a hand on his arm, keeping it there despite the searing heat seeping through the rough, thin material. "You shouldn't be alone." No one should be in such pain and misery by themselves. This man was obviously a shifter of some sort. And fuck, so was Kai. And Jason would want someone with Kai. God forbid he ever be in this state. It was what a good person would do. The kind of thing Kai would do. The kind of person he wanted to be for Kai. "What's your name?" he asked the Phoenix. "Theo." "Okay, Theo. What happens now?" Haunted eyes of fire looked up at him. "I don't know." "I'm not leaving you," he said, clasping Theo's hand. He stayed by Theo's side. For Theo, for Kai, hoping like hell he'd get to be by Kai's side again when this was all over. And if he didn't, that someone else would be. That he'd done enough to put karma on Kai's side. He stayed, even as the fire grew hotter, as flames raised his hairs and licked his skin, as the hot air forced shut his eyes and burned his lungs, as the snap and crackle of burning wood and Theo's screams filled his ears. He stayed until it burned the very last thought from his mind. Kai. 3. Kai banged on the door of the little cottage at the end of the winding limestone road. Hoping like hell he had the right one. In the dark, the nondescript cabins with their moss-covered roofs and forest-green walls blended in among the overgrown cypress trees and coastal redwoods. There was nothing to distinguish one remote cottage from the next. No structural variations, no house numbers, no landscaping to speak of. Just a sea of green on the fog-shrouded Kalira hills overlooking the ocean. Nothing except the lingering scent of Kai's best friend and the corvids that had roosted in the trees around the cottage at the end of the road. He lifted his fist to knock again, but the door swung open before his knuckles met wood. "What?" the man who wasn't Paris demanded. He stood in the barely open doorway, one hand on the jamb, the other on the door, blocking anyone's entry or view into the cottage with his tall, rangy frame. His jet-black hair was ruffled, his dress shirt untucked and unbuttoned, a rosy blush highlighting his tanned torso and face. From the anger shining in his violet eyes, or something else? "What do you want?" The shifter barked again at Kai. Between the eyes, the familiar flutter of his heartbeat, and the trees full of corvids outside, Kai could guess at what sort. And from his own research and what his friend had told him about the events of earlier that month, he could guess which one in particular. "I need to speak to Paris," he told Cormac Kelly, the Tallahassee detective and reaper for the Monte Corvo Ravens. "Who?" Kelly feigned surprise, but the way his vibrating energy snapped from anger to alarm, his gaze scanning the area behind Kai, and his fingers white-knuckling the door, gave the truth away. Kai had come to the right place. He squared his shoulders and pretended he wasn't a half-foot shorter than the other shifter. "Paris Cirillo." "I don't know who you're talking about." "I know he's here." "How's that?" Kai's "Because I can smell him," collided with Paris's "Because I told him." The only human among them ducking under one of the detective's arms. Dressed in sweatpants and an unzipped hoodie, he barreled toward Kai, engulfing him in a hug and ignoring Kelly's indignant, "You what?" Kai supposed the detective's question could be directed at him too, and he would have answered if not for his best friend's big body muffling his reply. After the past 24 hours of sleepless hell, Kai took a moment to savor the closeness, to take comfort in the knowledge at least one of his best friends was safe. Paris squeezed him tight, his skin fire-warmed, and when he drew back, his human eyes were a lovely, welcoming shade of brown. Nothing like Kai's colored lens version. "I missed you," Paris said to him, then to Kelly. "He's a friend. One of my best." "No one is supposed to know you're here," Kelly said, strain in his voice. "Not after the last time." Paris slid from Kai's arms to Kelly's side and gently patted his chest. "It's fine. We can trust him." He petted the shifter's chest in more than his usual tactile manner, and the detective seemed to settle a measure. "Now can we let him in before the witches get even more curious? The crows are audience enough." Swayed, at least for the moment, the detective stepped back enough for Paris to drag Kai inside by the wrist. The cabin was cozy, a single room except for the enclosed space in the back corner that Kai assumed was the bathroom. To their right was a large rumpled bed. In the middle of the space, where they stood, an oversized couch and chair, and in the other corners, a rustic kitchen and a table in front of a hearth. By the look of it, Paris had been here a while. The jazz music he preferred played quietly from a device somewhere, The walls were splashed with vibrant colors, and vases of wildflowers dotted every surface, spilling their own color into the space. Paris spilling his colorful personality all over, something his overbearing, toxic father had never let him do. Kelly, who had also been here a while, judging by the case files strewn on the table, clearly didn't mind. "What are you doing here?" Paris asked, drawing Kai's attention back to him. "Better question," Kelly said as he crossed his arms. "Why didn't the crows alert me that you were here in the first place?" Kai shifted his grip, clasping Paris's hand and giving it a squeeze. "You gotta promise not to be mad at me. This wasn't about you." He looked confused, but in typical Paris fashion, his heart outweighed his head. "I missed you too much to be mad." Kai wasn't sure that would hold, but he could practically feel the tension rolling off Kelly. He was protective of Paris, and for that, Kai was grateful, and owed him the truth. He dropped Paris's hand and held his own out to the detective. "Because I'm one of you," he finally answered. "Kai Finley." Paris's gasp was beat by Kelly's. As soon as he'd slipped his hand into Kai's, he'd known what he was. Or rather, his raven had. "What's your real name?" he asked. "Kaimis. Finley was my father's surname. My mother's was Costa." "Haida?" He nodded. "I thought your kind were gone." "Not gone. Just hiding." "Cormac Kelly. It's an honor. And please, call me Mac." Paris slid in between them, and his dark brows furrowed as his confused glare bounced between them. "I'm lost. Can someone please explain?" "You didn't know he was a raven?" Mac said. "Clearly not." He pointed at Kai's face. "And his eyes are brown." "Not really," Kai said. He stepped away, withdrawing a case out of his pocket, and, after setting it on the table, popped out his lenses and placed them inside. When he turned back around and met Paris's gaze, his friend's eyes grew wide, then whipped to Max. "They're not purple like yours." "No, because he's a different kind of raven. He's special, Paris." "Well, the special part I knew," Paris said, but the easy affection in his voice dwindled when he glanced back at Kai, and the hurt Kai hadn't wanted to see before dimmed his friend's lovely brown eyes. "But the other—" Kai caught his hand again between both of his. "I'm sorry. With your dad, I couldn't risk him finding out what I was." Beside them, Mac raked a hand through his hair. "Does anyone in YB know?" "Our other best friend, Jason. He's the only person I told." Paris's hand jerked in his. "Where is he?" "That's why I'm here. I think he's in trouble." He shifted his gaze to Mac. "The Raven knows he is." "Jason's always in trouble," Paris said. Truth, but this time it was different. So different that it had driven Kai the opposite direction from where his Raven wanted to be. Had driven him to take desperate measures, to use the safe house address Paris had given him in case of emergencies. Because this was one. And between what Paris had told him and what he'd looked up about Detective Kelly and his connections, there was no better group of people to understand that he needed to find his heart. He glanced back at Mac and lifted his free hand, splaying it over his chest. "It burns." 4. "What is this place?" Kai asked as he waited for Mac to unlock the alley door of what looked like an out-of-business tasting room from the front. The street-facing windows were boarded up, the stoop was littered, and a pair of crows had perched on the peeling over-door sign. Not an unusual sight here in the Lost Valley. Most retail establishments had closed shop, and the handful that remained had been boarded up, no doubt in anticipation of the Rift anniversary, and Samhain. If the howling wind and slanting rain that had picked up tonight on their way into the city were any indication, the next couple of weeks were going to be a nightmare. "Base of operations," Mac answered. The complicated lock finally disengaged, and he pushed open the door. Kai followed him inside and down a hallway, Mac flicking on lights as they dripped their way into a larger area. The speakeasy vestiges remained: a bar and stools, some glasses and half-empty bottles on the back bar, a chaise pushed against one long wall, and a heavy curtain on a metal arch around the front door. But the tables in the open middle space had been pushed together to make workstations for computers, keyboards, and monitors, their wires snaking across the wood floors. The booths along the other long wall were laden with weaponry: knives, crossbows, stakes, guns, and ammunition, lead bullets in marked boxes, silver ones in the stacks of lined and locked cases. A command center and armory in one. He swiveled back to the bar where Mac was pouring a shot of vodka from a frosty bottle he must have pulled from an under-cabinet cooler. "I'll take one too." Mac shot him a violet glare, but filled a second shot glass nonetheless. "I thought you were based in Tallahassee, at Monte Corvo." "Exactly how much did Paris tell you?" He tossed his soaked hoodie on top of Mac's trench and stood between two stools. "I knew that much from my own research. I had to know the lay of the land when I got here. The fact that you and Paris crossed paths." Mac pushed the shot glass across the bar. Lucky coincidence?" "I don't think so." He sipped the chilled liquor, surprised at its quality. But really, given the stockpile of weapons and other gear, he shouldn't have been. A good sign in more ways than one. "I'm glad he has you." "Who?" "Paris. He—" Approaching heartbeats of both humans and shifters stole Kai's words. Electronic beeps from the back door echoed down the hallway, then the scrape of the heavy metal door opening. A second of the storm raging outside, and then it was blocked out again by the door closing once more. Despite the tension rippling through Kai, he took his cues from Mac, who didn't seem the least bit surprised. He didn't startle, nor go on alert like he had at the cabin at Kai's arrival. Friendlies, then. As approaching footsteps grew louder, Mac tossed back the rest of his shot. "For the record, I don't have Paris." Before Kai could press for an explanation, a ragtag group of people joined them in the tasting room, two of whom were familiar, yet not. "Kai!" Icarus said as he led the rest of the group closer. "Mac didn't say it was you we were meeting." Kai knew the courtesan from Club Sutro, where Kai officially worked the bar slinging drinks, and Icarus unofficially worked the room slinging his own brand of escape. But this wasn't the same pink-haired, lace-wearing vampire from the last time Kai had seen him at the club. There was more actual red among the strands of pink. His favored lace, garters, and heels had been traded for an electric blue maxi skirt, a black leather coat, and combat boots. And his heart beat at a distinctly different rhythm. "You're not a vampire anymore?" he asked suddenly. Icarus stopped short, his skirt swishing at the abrupt halt. "How'd you know that?" "Because he's a shifter," Max said from behind the bar before tossing back his shot of vodka. A petite woman stepped past Icarus and right up to Kai. She had tanned skin like his and Max, and green hair styled in barrel curls that seemed impervious to the rain that had soaked everyone else. She lifted her hand to his cheek, and her mouth formed an O. Dazzling hazel eyes stared up at him. "Well, aren't you a pleasant surprise?" Icarus tapped her shoulder. "Share with the class, babe." "Not my secret to share," she said without looking away. Getting tired of that," grumbled the other man who had entered with them. Kai recognized him from Club Sutro, too. How could he forget one of the few people who had, over the past few years, ordered barrel-aged whiskey, a rare and pricey commodity? And in Adam Devlin's case, on the same day each year, until this past year, when he'd shown up again 2 days later looking for Icarus. Adam was different, too. The sadness that had hung over him was lessened, and the heat that had mysteriously warmed the air around him was gone. He hadn't exactly been a shifter before, but whatever had traveled with his soul, maybe what he sensed was traveling with Jason's now, was gone. He was human again. But no less gruff in the delivery of his words, even as he sidled to Icarus's side and slung an arm around his waist. "We're a day from the Rift anniversary. Time's ticking." His gaze bounced from Kai to Mac. "What's going on?" Mac moved out from behind the bar, 2 more shot glasses in hand. One for Adam, the other for the mountain lion shifter, who had been the last of the party. She'd hung back, surveying the scene. "I'd like to know that, too," she said. Mac jutted his chin in Kai's direction. "Tell them." Kai swept his gaze over the group again. No, he didn't think Paris crossing these people's paths was a coincidence at all. He paused, unsure what to call Jason, how much to give away. While Paris seemed to know these people well, Kai was only really acquainted with one. He hedged. "My friend, Jason, he's human, and a smuggler." "In legal terms, he's a thief and a fence." Mac handed Adam his phone. "I didn't have time to pull together a physical file." "Why are we wasting our time then?" Adam said, handing it back. "We've got a mile-long to-do list before tomorrow night, and petty criminals aren't on it." The pixie, still closest to Kai, placed a hand on his chest. "Because this raven thinks his friend's a phoenix now. Jason was human before?" Kai nodded as Adam, suddenly interested, untangled from Icarus and stepped closer. He recalled one night at Club Sutro when Adam had told Icarus he used to be a cop. His sharp gaze and sharper, "Explain," now were 100% interrogator. "He got a lead from a source on a stash of Vincent Cirillo's somewhere in the Canyonlands. Gold and jewels, he was told. Enough money to get us out of—" Kai paused, then hedged again. "The situation we're in now. It didn't make sense to me." "We know what kind of stash Vincent hid out there," the mountain lion said. "Who was the source?" Adam asked him. "A vampire he knew." "Shit. Another one." "Word's getting around," Icarus said. Adam raked a hand through his short brown and gray hair. "Without the entire story." "Now I need an explanation," Kai said. He was losing the thread here while the one that tied him to Jason was stretching thin. He was running out of time. "Adam was a phoenix," Icarus said. "I was a vamp." Lips pulled back, he clanked his teeth together in a simulated bite sans fangs. "But you're both human now." "Because their souls had a connection," the green-haired woman said. "And because I channeled the phoenix where it needed to go." "Are you a witch?" Kai asked her. "Not exactly," she said with an enigmatic grin. "I had help." "Who's still gone?" Adam said. "Any word from Robin?" he asked the woman shifter. She shook her head. "We may not need them," the green-haired woman said. "Not with you. Your souls have a connection?" "Yes." He laid his hand over hers where it still rested on his chest. "It burns." "I know." She gave him a pat, then slid her hand out from under his and glanced around at the others in the room. "We need to find him before someone else does. Before tomorrow night." Mac withdrew his phone again, thumbed at the screen, then set it on a nearby table and waved everyone over. These are the locations in the Canyonlands that Paris remembered hearing his father mention. The mountain lion tapped at 3 of the different X marks. We've cleared those out already. Adam gestured at the other 2 remaining. Which leaves these then? Kai pointed at the more southern of the 2. That one, he said, a flare of heat in his chest confirming his gut's instinct. The raven knows it. 5. Everything burned. His eyes, his skin, his breath, his insides. And it burned even worse every time someone sneaked into the shell of a building he'd woken up in. Every time he had to send a blast of heat in their direction to keep them back. The only defense mechanism he had with all his gear burned or buried beneath rubble. The only relief was the wind and rain that whipped around him, the storm that called to him. He would close his burning eyes and turn his face up to the rain, to the cool water that reminded him of the blue-green of Kai's eyes behind his contacts. Kai. He would be frantic by now. Jason had tried 6 times to stand, to crawl, to move somewhere else, anywhere else, where he might be able to get his hands on a phone and call his friend. But he was so weak. His head spun, his insides boiled, and his outsides glowed. With no clothes or other coverings in sight, he would be exposed. He'd tried to call out to one of the earlier intruders and make a trade for a phone, but when the intruder had flashed his fangs, Jason hadn't had any choice but to crisp him like he'd done the other vampires who'd tried to attack. Fucking Moira. What had she gotten him into? Another gust of wind blew through the cavernous ruin, and Jason closed his eyes, savoring the cool blanket that surrounded him, imagining it was Kai's arms. Or the wings Kai had only ever told him about. White and cold like the snow he'd never seen before either. Was Kai up there somewhere now, sailing and scouting to find him, putting himself in danger because he'd fallen for another bad idea? Fuck. Jason would never forgive himself if Kai got hurt or captured because of him. But at the rate he was going, burning, he didn't think there'd be much time left. A crack to his left. He righted his head and opened his eyes, peering into the darkness. He was disoriented, the distance and sharpness still new. A glint of white, a hiss, a flash of movement. Fuck. Another one. He shifted back behind the rubble he'd leaned against and balled his fists, willing the fire inside him to gather inside them. He peeked over the pile of cement, metal, and wood, searching for this target. The vampire was closer, stalking with its fangs and claws out. He raised one fist, preparing to fire, when a cacophony of caws and craws cut through the silence, and in the next blink, the crows and ravens were there, sailing through the gaps in the building where walls and windows used to be, creating a barrier between him and the vampire. And on the other side of the wall of black birds, growls. There was a scuffle, more growls, then the vampire's scream, and an unfamiliar voice calling, "First vamp down!" First? There was more than one? Fuck! And were these rescuers? Or was someone else after him? Was Kai with them? The birds were corvids after all, but he didn't see any white feathers among the black. Still, hope swelled until gunfire popped off. Jason readied the fireballs again. "Second vamp down," called a voice he did vaguely recognize, but couldn't place. A chorus of clears followed, and then so did the birds, flying up to perch on the various outcrops and rebar from the decimated building. All except one, the largest raven with purple eyes that lighted on the top of the rubble pile Jason was crouched behind. His voice wobbled as he asked, "Are you here for me?" He'd heard about certain raven shifters in these parts. The Reapers. The big black bird let out a loud craw, and Jason's heart tumbled. "Jason!" Then soared. He whipped his gaze back in the direction of the previous scuffle and saw Kai running in his direction. Jason struggled to try to stand, wanting, needing to wrap his arms around his world. But someone wrapped theirs around Kai first, halting him from falling to Jason's side at the last minute. Someone Jason recognized from Club Sutro and dealings with Paris. Icarus. A vampire. He fisted another fireball. "Stop!" shouted a deep voice, an older white man running between them. "He's not a vampire anymore." Nada. "They're friendlies, Jason," Kai said. "Friends of Paris's." Then to Icarus, "Let me go! Let her assess things first." "Her?" Jason croaked. "Me." From behind the group appeared a shorter woman. Her nose was pierced, her ears too, and her hazel eyes were kind as she kneeled beside him. She laid a hand on his arm and didn't recoil or react to the heat at all. "I'm here to help you." The thing inside him flapped its wings, and Mother rattled around in his head, though this person was definitely not the woman who had abandoned him as a kid. "Is he about to flame out?" the older man asked, now guarded by a mountain lion on one side and a coyote on the other. "No, he's in recovery," the woman answered. "Recovery? But it hurts." Jason blew out on a breath of hot air. "I know. The Phoenix is still digging in, healing you. There was a fire?" He nodded. "The building came down on top of us." The older man inhaled sharply and turned away, but not before Jason caught the terror and heartache in his blue-gray eyes. Icarus went to his side, releasing Kai to slide in beside the woman. "Can I touch him?" "I think so." He reached out a hand, cupping Jason's cheek, and the cool relief that swept through him was a million times better than the rain. Kai slumped toward him, giving him more relief, and wrapped his arms around him. "I'm here," Kai muttered into his hair. "I've got you. I've got you." The watchful raven hopped down on their level, and the stranger with Icarus joined them. "We need to get him out of here," he said. "Adam," Icarus said. "Give her a minute." "We don't have a minute. There will be more, and now she's exposed too." She, whatever her name, paid them no mind, her hazel gaze still on him. "You have a choice, but you need to make it now." She glanced at Kai. "Both of you." "What choice?" Jason asked from where he was nestled under Kai's chin. "One day," she said to Kai. "If you stay by his side, you will have to wrap your wings around him and deliver the fire back to me. And on that day, he will be human again, and you will become a raven like him." She nodded toward the black one by their side. "A Reaper?" She nodded. "That day can be today. The Phoenix and your magic will heal him, and you will save him from flaming out without you by his side in the future." Jason glanced between the black raven and Kai. "You don't want to be a Reaper?" "My tribe. We turned away from it generations ago because your kind brought down the first Phoenix for me," the woman said, "and burned an entire village in the process." "What happens if we don't do it today?" Jason said. "Adam trains you to live with the Phoenix and harness it for us." "I thought you needed them back," Icarus said to her. "The ones who are about to flame out," she said. "But we caught Jason at the beginning. You could use the firepower and a smuggler." "For the Phoenixes you do need," Adam said. "Exactly, and I can use Kai's magic to channel those back." Without him turning to a reaper? Jason said. She turned her gaze back to them.
Yes, because it's your soul, your phoenix that his raven is connected with. Your souls will travel together. Your choice. Make it now.
Kai shifted and opened his mouth to speak, to no doubt try to save Jason more pain. But Jason spoke first. I want to do good. I want to be good for you. I can do this. We can do this.
Are you sure?
Sure that I want more time with you? That I don't want you to become something you aren't just for my sake?
But I would do anything to save you.
I know, baby, but I can finally make this life good for us, he smiled. So long as you promise to be there by my side. Kai lowered his forehead to his cool breath a balm to the fiery storm inside him. Always, he promised. 6. They waited out his recovery and the Rift anniversary on an out parcel of Monte Corvo, on the banks of the vineyard's reservoir, close to water and far from any people or structures. If the Phoenix got away from him, minimal damage would ensue before Kai could work his magic. But Kai hadn't needed to, and for the first time since that fateful night, Jason woke feeling like himself. A little warmer than usual, his senses more attuned than they had been before, but he didn't feel any aches and pains, and he felt in control of his mind and body. He only remembered bits and pieces of the past few days. His head in Kai's lap on the harrowing drive out of YB in a vintage Camaro. Witches, Adam, and the green-haired woman named Mary fussing over him, corvids circling overhead, and coyotes roaming the fields around them. Kai snuggled against his side. Kai wasn't by his side now, but Jason could feel him close. He can open his eyes. He squinted against the daylight, adjusting to the bright Tallahassee sunshine before opening them fully, and gasping at the sight above him. Against the clear blue sky, a snow-white raven soared. Kai, more beautiful than Jason had imagined. His wings spread wide, his spade-shaped tail feathers fluttering with the breeze, his blue-green eyes shining bright. There was freedom and peace in the way he glided, and joy in the way he barrel-rolled with the 2 black ravens flying with him. Playing. Jason laughed out loud, the joy contagious. This was what he had wanted for his friend, for the man he'd spent years falling in love with, who had bound his soul to Jason's for good. His laughter drew Kai's attention. The white raven circled once more with the others, then broke off and flew in Jason's direction, diving low before leveling out and gliding over him. Close enough for Jason to skate his fingertips over Kai's soft underside as he flew over. He sailed into the nearby trees, and by the time Jason flipped onto his side to look in that direction, Kai emerged in human form, sans clothes. Jason whistled low as he looked his fill. Kai wasn't a large man. Average height, lean muscles, unruly dark curls, but he moved with a confident, attractive grace that put everything about him in perfect proportion. Freedom in the way he walked, same as the way he flew.
Don't know when I'm going to get used to that,
Kai said as he folded onto the ground beside him. Me ogling you?
No, you've been doing that for years.
He placed his hand just above Jason's chest.
The waves of heat radiating off you.
He rotated onto his back and lifted the end of the blanket covering him. Get under here with me and I'll share. Kai didn't hesitate to slide in beside him, the length of him fitted against Jason's side, arm over his belly, head on his shoulder. It was the way they'd occasionally snuggled when the heat went out in their crappy apartment, the way they snuggled non-stop the past few days. No lack of heat now, but a delightful lack of clothing. He skated his fingertips up and down Kai's spine, relishing the closeness, the softness of his skin, all of it more than it had ever been before. You look so happy up there, in the air.
I am.
It's safe here? He nodded.
They reinforced the boundaries after a recent breach.
When's the last time you flew?
When I first flew down to YB, it feels like a lifetime ago.
He trailed a hand over Kai's shoulder blades, imagining the wings there. But it feels good now? Kai's smile tickled his skin.
Better than I remember. How about you?
Good today. The Phoenix isn't trying to claw in or out of me for a change. I feel like me, mostly. He stopped, voice a momentary wobble, but at Jason's squeeze, started again.
Any regrets?
He glanced down, meeting the cautious blue-green ones staring up at him. Only that I haven't kissed you yet. He hauled Kai closer and up, but stopped short of claiming Kai's mouth. But only if you still want me. I love you, but I don't want you to ever feel trapped, like I made this decision for... He brushed his lips across Jason's, so gentle, Jason's words died on a shiver.
I love you too, and I've always wanted you. I will always want you.
Then not gentle at all, as he crushed their mouths together, freedom flowing between them, both of them taking what they'd wanted for so long. Kai kissing him deep and thorough, then yanking the blanket under Jason to roll him on top. Jason taking the cue and trailing kisses down Kai's neck, over his chest, throwing off the blanket and taking Kai's stiff cock in his mouth, sucking and fondling until Kai was writhing beneath him. At the edge, his fingers curled in Jason's hair, his pants and moans filling his ears. Crawling back up the beautiful, quaking length of him, rolling onto his side and bringing Kai with him, front to front, so Jason could wrap his hand around both their cocks, stroking long and slow, building their pleasure together. Kai's hand covering his, ramping up the pace, their hips rocking in time, the heat flowing between them, balanced and in check even as they careened toward their